Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 2 of Chatting with Granny Dawn. I hope everybody had an awesome Thanksgiving. You didn't eat too much, and that you enjoyed time with your family if you were able to, and friends or those that you call family. Tonight, I have the absolute uh, great opportunity to talk with a good friend of mine and HIV advocate, Mr. Pedro Benitez. Pedro has been living with HIV for 26 years. He is a Puerto Rican heterosexual male who was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, but he now resides in Rochester, New York. And he works at Action for a Better Community Services. I hope I said that right. As a prevention specialist. So, Pedro, welcome to my live. How are you tonight?
Oh, God has allowed me another day. Thank you for having me.
Good, good, good. Yeah. So, I just wanted to have you come on, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and chat with me and talk to me about how life has been for you living with HIV as a heterosexual man and as a Latino heterosexual man. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about when you first got diagnosed, what you do right now for a living. Just give us a little background on Pedro.
I was diagnosed in 2006, which doesn't make it 26 years, but there's a whole bigger issue.
Okay.
Um, 2006, when I was diagnosed, it wasn't uh, um, it wasn't a shocker for me per se, because I had been an HIV care manager for about 10 years prior to that.
Okay.
Um, so yes, it was shocking, but I knew that I could live as long as I did what I had to do and make sure I take my medicine daily.
Okay. And why was it not a shocker to you when you were diagnosed with HIV?
I had a mother that had been an HIV care manager since the early '80s. I had a brother that was doing the same job I'm doing now, actually, and then I had a sister that worked at a hospital in the HIV department. So and my own knowledge of since I was young. When I came into this country at the age of 13, 14, my mom worked at a she was an HIV prevention. And when she didn't have daycare, I would go with her to different houses of elder people that had HIV. So, those are stories that I don't really say. So I've been in the HIV world longer than I've been positive.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, when you say it wasn't a shocker to you that about when you got diagnosed with HIV, um, is that because of lifestyle or what was the reasoning behind you not being shocked about being diagnosed with HIV? Because I know when I was diagnosed with HIV, I was totally shocked.
Well, I'm a realist. I understand. I don't blame the world for things that I've done myself. So in 1996, at the time, I don't know what time of the year that was, but there was a hurricane and a flood happening at the same time, and I was homeless, and I know the shelter was closed. It wasn't allowing other more people. So
Okay.
I was just walking, and an African woman stopped in the car and offered me $500 to sleep with her.
Okay.
And as a homeless person, that's an opportunity when there's a hurricane and a flood
Absolutely.
happens. So I tried to go to the store and get me a condom. She said, "Nah, I got you. I'm gonna hook you up in the hotel for about a month. and I'm gonna come and see you every so often.
Okay.
So because of that, and her homegirl, which was like seven women, different times. One of the women gave me AIDS,
Okay.
um, and that was in '96. It I was diagnosed before '96. I was trying to have a child, and me and my wife were trying to have a child, and I got checked more than 100 times,
Okay.
and nothing. A couple months later, like 6, 7 months later, I used to work for a fencing company. I used to get paid every 15 days. Um, I remember giving her some money. I turned around and died. Um, the reason in in the beginning, the reason I went to the hospital is because of my kidneys. My kidneys shut down. I never
Wow.
knew I had kidney issues.
Wow.
When they gave me the first cocktail, the first HIV cocktail, which happened to be Truvada,
Okay.
it set my body in a shock, and
Wow.
I was in a coma for a little while. Um, so after I got out the coma and everything, I was in a coma. I died twice. I was in a coma. I was in dialysis. I'm only here because of God. Um, After learning what I understood happened to me was that I was given a medicine, the first medicine. They was trying anything. The first thing they gave me, um, the person that I believe passed the resistant arms to me, that was the medicine that was resistant from. So it shocked my body. Um, Plus the medicine they were giving me didn't correlate with the type of HIV I have.
Okay, so let's stop right there and back up.
Right, 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 right,
So we're
right,
gonna
right,
come back to that, but I want
right,
to
right, right.
back up to, so you met this woman while you were homeless,
Yes,
and she invited you to go to a hotel with her and said that she was going to give you $500, and that kind of progressed into some other things with you being with other women, being paid, and you think during that time is when you contracted HIV. Am I correct? Okay.
yes.
And then when you went into the coma, were you diagnosed at that point, or you got diagnosed after you ended up in the hospital and went into the coma?
When I got out of my coma, they told me, yeah, you have AIDS.
Wow.
And and because of my knowledge of HIV and AIDS, I was like, no, you mean HIV. They was like,
Okay.
no, and I had late start AIDS. I was shooting myself up with I forgot the name of the medicine that when you're in late term you have to hit yourself like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, I had to do that 3 or 4 times a day just
Okay.
to stay alive.
Wow.
Um, what was the question you asked?
So no, so the next question is,
Okay.
so after you got diagnosed, right? So you had
Hmm.
this education on HIV because you worked in the field, your mom worked in the field, so you weren't like totally shocked, right? Because of, you were homeless and some of the things that you said that you had did. After you got your diagnosis, was there any struggle mentally for you, or were you just like, hey, I got AIDS, I'm going to take my medication and go on with my life? Or what was that first year or two like for you after you got diagnosed?
I think the moment I was diagnosed, I could have came out and started advocating then, but I had to learn how to walk and talk again.
Mm.
I had to learn everything that everybody takes for granted. I had to learn how to do that again. and it took me about a year and some change. So like 2008, 2008 is when I started going to different agencies. And in the beginning, I would never use my mother's name. Um, I wouldn't even never let nobody know who my mother was
And
because
why is that?
I didn't want nobody to open doors because of her name. I wanted to open doors because of mine.
Okay. Okay. Understandable. So you get this diagnosis and you were in a coma. You had been in a coma because your kidney shut down. So you get this diagnosis and you said, you were trying to get yourself back together where you learned how to walk and all that. And thank God, right? I just want to say thank God. You find out that you have not the HIV or the AIDS that I have. You have a separate form of HIV. Talk to us about that.
So HIV number two comes from Africa.
Okay.
99.99% of the people in America have HIV-1,
Hmm.
which is the same strain as HIV-2. So when people tell me, well, what's the difference? There's no difference. Same race. HIV-2 is a turtle. HIV-1 is the rabbit. Same race, same ending. Just one is faster than the other.
And when you say faster, you mean faster and like contracting, faster and multiplying with the. Okay. All right. Okay. Got you.
So
Got
so
you.
so so if you listen to what I said, I was diagnosed in 2006,
Hmm.
but I was infected in 1996.
So that was 10 years before you knew you were positive.
So HIV-2, even though I was taking a lot of tests to have a child with my wife,
Wasn't coming up.
but I believe that they were testing for HIV-1 at that time,
Oh,
the
okay.
the early
So
2000s.
the tests are different.
They are now. In the beginning, in after 2006, they started checking. They started checking. For, I think for antibiotics for of number two.
Okay.
Uh, but before then, um, they didn't check. They only checked for number one.
Okay. So do you think that, and I know your answer, but I'm going to ask it. Do you think that that's why it took so long for you to know that you were had an AIDS diagnosis because they were testing for the wrong form of HIV and AIDS?
And let me tell you something that happened, so you understand how I knew that that they were saying something wrong to me. So when the doctor told me you had AIDS, I was like, no, you mean HIV.
Hmm.
He was like, no, AIDS, and walked away. And I thought about it. My mother came in. My brother came in. My uncle, which was he was a nurse in Vietnam, and when we talked about it, all three of us concurred. We need to do an RNA.
Okay.
So
And what is an RNA?
it tells you what type of strain you have.
Okay.
Which most people don't know that, but because I asked that question, they was like, "What you mean?" I said, "It's impossible. I've never been, I never had HIV. How can you just tell me I have AIDS?
Hmm.
You can't have one. One is the other one. AIDS. You cannot catch AIDS. You cannot.
Okay.
You can develop AIDS. You cannot catch it.
Absolutely.
A person that doesn't treat their HIV turns into AIDS. You cannot catch HIV. You cannot sexually give it to nobody. No, that's a myth. That's the bullshit people want to tell you to put stigma on us.
So when you contract HIV. And
Yes,
HIV can turn into AIDS, and that's because you end up getting an opportunistic infection like kidney
yes,
failure,
yes,
cancer,
yes,
pneumonia.
Yes.
So everyone does not progress into AIDS. You
No.
have many people who have HIV and they never progress into AIDS. So I wanted to say that for people to understand that everybody does not progress to
No.
the AIDS stage.
No.
Okay.
No.
So, okay, so you find out you have an AIDS diagnosis. You are trying to come back from this, horrific situation of you being in this coma and, finding out you had kidney failure. And so your health starts getting back to where it should be.
Mhm.
Now you're living life.
Mhm.
When did you start? Did you ever, and when did you start dating, if you did?
Um. Well, I was always with my wife,
So
but
you were
between
married. You were married during the diagnosis.
yes, to a woman
Okay,
is
so
negative.
let's back up. I missed that part. See, I'm listening, but I'm 50 now, y'all. So I missed some stuff. So you're married, you're diagnosed, and you and your wife decide to stay together.
I actually told her because we don't have kids. She doesn't have any kids. I said, go ahead. You're a really good woman. Go ahead. Somebody's gonna make you a good wife. And she was like, nah, I'm a ride or die.
Well, look at you know what? Look at that because that don't happen to many people. But look at that. Okay, okay, okay. All right. So you guys decide to stay together,
Yeah.
and then was there ever a point that you um, guys weren't together and you started dating or got into the dating pool?
Yes. Yes. There were times that I was feeling myself doing bullshit. I, I'm gonna keep it. I'm not gonna lie about the shit. I'm gonna keep it 100. But I never had stigma issues because I'm very honest about me. I don't lie about me. I just don't. I just
So,
don't.
so when you started dating after you and your wife, whatever the whatever that was, you guys weren't together anymore, right?
Hmm.
And you started dating. Did you tell women right from the jump that you had an AIDS diagnosis, or did that
First
happen
conversation.
first
First
conversation? You
conversation.
said, "Listen, before we even go."
Because if you don't like this, listen, we're not gonna spend. I'm not gonna spend time with you. We're not gonna spend. You can keep it. You can keep it moving. I'm not. I'm not into. I'm not into worrying about one person when there's 7 billion people on this earth.
Okay. And so how did that go for you? So when you started dating and you would tell somebody that you had an AIDS diagnosis, were were women okay with it, or did you have women say this is not what I want to do? How was that going for you?
I was honest. I never had kickback. I've always been honest about me. So I don't get kickback when I don't have nothing to hide. There's no kickback.
So never once have you ever had a woman say, I don't want to deal with you because you have AIDS.
Nah,
All right. Okay.
never, never.
So now you're in the dating field, and we know that a lot of people assume that any man who has HIV contracted it because they are having sex with men.
Hmm.
How have you been able to navigate that for yourself? Because if I'm correct, you are a heterosexual man, correct?
Absolutely, straight
So
heterosexual
how,
man. Yes.
so how have you navigated that? Because I know from experience that that usually is, even when you hear a man say that, and I'm speaking from my own experience, there's still a question in my mind. So how have you navigated that?
In the beginning, I just had to reiterate it, and I went to a conference. I forgot the name of the conference. I went to the conference, and the first day I was there, people were looking at me. They was like, "You straight?" So then I said something. That everybody started looking at me like I said, "Well, if I had to be be I'm gonna say what I gotta say, whether people like it or not." So
Mm,
what I said was, and it bothered some people, but it explained a whole lot to others. So let
okay.
me say, it may bother you, but it will explain my meaning. So there was like, well, how we know you're a straight man? And I said, oh, I've never had sex with a woman in her anus, let alone a man. They was like, they looked at me, they was like, oh, you straight. I said, straight.
What the hell is straight? Jesus. The
No,
thing
the reason I said that because people, even men, assumes that other men know that are literate when it comes to anal sex.
okay.
I'm literate to anal sex because of my job. I walk around with a vagina and a dildo showing people how to use condoms in the middle of the street. So yes, I know about that. Do
Okay.
I have self experience? No.
So it seems like to me that luckily you have not had a huge issue with once you came out and said, that you have an AIDS diagnosis, and when you got into the dating field, women were okay with your diagnosis and you never had an issue with that. And also you never had an issue with um navigating the system far as, being a heterosexual man and not having to kind of like too much pushback about people thinking that you were a possible man who had sex with men.
I
So my
I
next,
I no, but and let me say, I also believe I didn't get a lot of kickback also because um I was a street dude. I sold drugs.
okay,
I was a boxer. Um, I played semi-pro football. So I was in the street. So the people that ever said anything about me were women. I would pay a man to talk about me.
okay. So then here's my next question, because I know there had to be some bumps in the road for you, right? Because nobody with HIV has had this rosy colored screen, right? And so tell me where the bumps came for you as a man living with HIV, who is a straight man living with HIV. Where did your bumps come at?
Well, my bumps were mostly self-induced. Let me say that.
Okay.
Um, I said that my mom used to be a care manager, but after that, I wasn't raised with my mother or father.
Okay.
When I was when I was like 13, 14 years old, I was homeless for about 3 or 4 years. No
Okay.
fat. All my family had left here. Uh, my grandmother came like 2014, 2015, and I try to, stay over there with her, but she's a church lady. I like to smoke weed. It didn't go together. So I didn't put her in that predicament, and I just stayed in the streets. So most of my life I've been in the streets as either a homeless person or a person living off of other people.
So basically, having an AIDS diagnosis has never been an issue for you, whether it's
It actually
dating.
it saved my
Um,
life.
okay, and what do you mean when you say that?
Um, I remember once upon a time I asked God, true story. I asked God to take my life or give me something to live for.
Okay.
I was living a very dangerous life before HIV.
Okay.
I shouldn't have got to 20 years of old. 20 years old. I just turned 50 the other day.
Okay,
Uh,
50. We in the 50
yeah,
club. We in the 50 club.
absolutely. Happy belated birthday too.
Thank
Um,
you.
Happy belated birthday. Um, so my upbringing had to do with me figuring life out by myself. For the first part of it, and then being a single father to a girl alone. So the drama of being alone, trying to hustle while you trying to raise a child, it wasn't working. So I did a lot of stuff to myself. Um, so most of my things were self-induced. I didn't did I have kickback? I might have had more kickback from people not believing that I'm Puerto Rican than the HIV world.
So so here's my thing. I thank God that your journey hasn't been, hard for you living with, HIV AIDS. But we do know that there are a lot of heterosexual men who are having a hard time living with this diagnosis and navigating the system, right?
Hmm.
And not understanding how to, unfortunately, maybe convince people that, and listen, at the end of the day, there is nothing wrong with being a gay male. But unfortunately, most people link any man who has HIV or AIDS as a man who has sex with men. So I know that you do a lot of advocacy for heterosexual men, right?
Hmm.
Talk to me about and really quick, guys, if anybody has any questions, please post them in the chat. Or if you'd like to join the conversation, I posted the link in the chat, or you can click right on the live and you can come on in. How have you assisted and advocated for those other heterosexual men living with HIV and AIDS who are not having an easy time living with this diagnosis, sharing their diagnosis, dating with their diagnosis? What part have you been playing in that?
Being consistent and talking about the things that as a straight heterosexual man living with HIV, because and well, I learned two things. So let me talk about the first part. The first part is being a being a straight heterosexual man uh, that doesn't check a box. That
Okay.
doesn't check a box. There are no services for me.
Okay.
When I say box, I mean I've never been on drugs. I don't have a record. I've never been to jail, and I've never slept with a man.
Okay.
Or I'm not coming out of jail. I've never slept with a man. So because I can't check a box for none, there's no services for me.
Okay.
I can't get housing help. I can't get nothing
Wow.
because I can't check no box.
So because you're a man living with AIDS, but because you don't have any substance abuse issues, mental health issues, or you're not homeless at this time, because you don't check those boxes, you don't get any services.
Nothing.
And so
Nothing.
tell me what are you doing about that? How are you advocating for those things? Tell me about that. So
There's
tell me
there's
about some of the
there's
advocating stuff you do.
the problem is that there's not a lot of men like me talking about it and being honest about it. There's very few of me around. And you probably know all the men that I'm talking about. Uh,
So here's my thing.
um,
What do you do?
I
So first of all, I
advocate.
want to before I answer you, first of all, Marsha, hi. And Pedro is a heterosexual man who's living with AIDS. That's why we keep saying AIDS. He is a man living with AIDS. That's what he said. He is a man living with AIDS. So that's why we're saying that. Okay. So go ahead. Yeah. How are you navigating advocating for those who, are having issues and can't get that?
It's hard because there's not other people talking up. There's not other men bringing up the issue. They rather not deal with a system that's very LGBT centered.
Okay.
And if you're not around LGBT, they don't see you.
Okay.
True story. So they divide our community uh, into whomever you have sex with, and group everybody up, and that's how they divide us, just like they divide everybody else of color.
Okay. So tell me, what are some of the yes, Marsha, he is on treatment. Again, Pedro identifies as a man living with AIDS. So that's his choice to say that. So I just want to put that out there. Um, what are some of the boards or advocacy places that you are a part of where you're using your voice to bring heterosexual concerns to the table?
So I sit on a lot of boards, uh, and I advocate for straight men living with HIV or AIDS, um, and I advocate for for men without services. And the problem is there's not a lot of us to talk about it. And I'm always talking about, well, it's not going away. So
So, so I know for me, I try to advocate for women. So I'm also, as everybody knows, and maybe not, depending on who's watching this, I am also a woman living with HIV, 17 years. That is me on the poster back there. I'm part of the HIV Stops With Me campaign for New York State. For me, I advocate for women. That's my goal, and also I try to advocate for and in the faith communities. And for me, I try to make sure that services are geared towards women as much as possible, right? Making sure that we
hmm
have gynecology, GYN services, right? And that they're
hmm
checking for the things that could be affecting our body, whether HIV positive or not, right? Or making sure that women are at the table. Also, my thing now is, for the pharmaceutical agencies, that do these trials and things like that, women are not at the table. We have PrEP, right? And PrEP, you have Truvada. Women can take PrEP, but women can't take the Descovy because there was never any trials that happened with women, right? And so
hmm
a lot of times women are not in these trials. So that's another question I have for you. Have you ever had to or tried to talk about heterosexual men making sure that they are a part of these pharmaceutical trials?
that's a harder conversation than women being in clinical trials.
And why?
So one of the things that I do, I sit on a GCAP, Global ACTG, Global AIDS Clinical Trials Group. So we go to DC. I'm part of a global community of positive people, and any medicine for us, clinical trials, we have to look at it and make sure that it's safe for our people. So I sit
Okay.
on those trials, and what happened this year was that the women in Africa did not know that in the United States most of the clinical trials are for men. In Africa, all the clinical trials are for women. They can't get
Wow,
men to
really?
be
I
on.
didn't know that.
They can't get men to get on clinical trials.
And that's why, because of stigma.
Yes, because over there, if a man is a man that want to sleep with a man, he happens to be African, he can't let nobody know that. They have to hide to have their interactions because they'll kill him. So they have to hide who they are until there's time to do what they want to do. But the women did not know. They thought that that was a thing in America, and they found out that America's not doing nothing for women. What is the point? And when the American women found out that all the clinical trials in Africa were for women, they was like, "What's going on?"
So answer me this question, and this is more on positive. If you
Hmm.
had to think back to one person who helped you along your HIV journey, the one person that gave you the drive, gave you the passion, gave you the push to do the work that you do, who would that person be? Or whether they're alive or dead? And if they were listening to this, who is that? Why are they the person you're picking? And what would you like to say to them? I know that's a tough question.
Mm. I never been asked that actually. Um, I don't know. I gotta think about that. I never thought about that
Okay.
because there's several people that helped me in the journey, but uh, uh, the person that when early in my life didn't have too much to do with me as their son is the person that inspired me in the end.
Your mom.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's the answer. Your mom.
yeah.
So here's my next question. If you had to talk to a group of heterosexual men diagnosed with HIV, they're newly diagnosed, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Give me 5 things that you would tell them to help them navigate through the system, and to come to a place of acceptance. 5 things. What would you tell them?
Now let me ask you two questions. Let me ask you a question. Do I have to be professional or do I have to be the person that I can be?
Be the
It's a
person
good
that you
answer.
be the person that you can be, but don't get too don't go off the rails.
Don't go past the line. Okay.
Yeah, don't go off
Um,
the rails. But
five
be you.
five things. 5 things.
3 if you can't think of 5. Give me 3 good ones if you can't think of
Well,
5.
no, because the first one is very crucial.
Okay, and what is that?
Uh, let everything go. What I mean by let everything go is having HIV or AIDS. The biggest killer for having HIV AIDS is drama, and usually it's not your own.
Okay. Okay.
So that is the biggest killer of people that are HIV positive and have AIDS. Second, it's not going away, so get over
Mm.
it. It doesn't wash off. You
I don't
can't.
know if I like that get over it term, but okay,
And
I'll let
you
you
know,
have it.
and that's why I say, listen, when I talk to men, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay. So I'm gonna let you have it. So okay. So it's not
I'm
going
not.
away. Get over it. What's the next one?
Um, take time for you.
Okay.
The first the first year of this journey is very very rough. And you have to. Uh, I told somebody recently. I told a female positive person, and she was having issues about dating. And I was like, "When's the last time you took yourself out?" She was like, "What you mean?" I said, "When's the last time you took yourself out?" And she was like, "Last time I went out, I was with my boo before he left me." I said, "What's the last thing he did?" He said, "I used to like go to." This is what she said. She used to like go to a restaurant. I used to like when we used to get ready to leave. She slept in my ass. He would slept in my ass. I said, "Well, go to the restaurant, take yourself out to eat. When you're ready to walk out the door, slap your own ass. You gotta love you. If you can't love you, you can't include nobody else."
You right about that because I'm
I'm
listen.
just saying.
I'm huge on self care. Right. I'm huge on not allowing anybody to think or make me feel that I have to take anything less because I'm HIV positive, right? Because HIV is living with me. I'm not living with it. And so I'm not going to dummy myself down or take less than I deserve because I'm HIV positive. That has nothing to do with who I am, right? And so I tend to see people take things that they shouldn't have to take because they're positive. Because I know for me, for a long time, Pedro, I thought that nobody would love me because I was HIV positive, right? And that I should take whatever comes my way. I should be appreciative. Now, this is what I'm talking about me. And so I had to get past that stinking thinking, I'm gonna call it, right? And learn to love me for me, right? And be okay in my own space, enjoy my own company, and know that my peace is at the top of the list. And if you're not bringing me peace, you don't need to be bringing me nothing. So I definitely get that. Okay, so what are we on? Number four? I think we
That
on
was
four.
three. Yeah.
Three?
No,
Okay,
but let
let's
me
go
say
to four.
one of the things before I move to that one. One of the things I to what you said is I don't do drama.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a fuck what it is. I don't do drama,
Mm-hmm.
and I always say, um, I've been in Rochester for a long time, but I'm naturally from the 305,
And the 305 is
Miami, Florida, downtown
okay.
Miami, Florida. That's when I said that I was doing my things down there.
Mm-hmm.
Same area. Um, ooh, I forgot what I was saying.
You were supposed to be doing number four, and then you started talking about doing your things in Miami, Florida. So let's go through the things. So what's number four that you would tell a newly diagnosed heterosexual male who just got diagnosed with HIV or AIDS?
And this is critical for straight men. Let me say that. What I'm about to say, this is very critical. You're gonna be rejected. Go into this knowing you're gonna be rejected like that. You don't have a hard time. It's gonna happen. It's going to happen. But you're gonna come across somebody that was gonna shock you. Um, and educate. Because some people, some women, I know a woman that was with a man because he educated her. Before he disclosed, he educated her. He threw little hints because you got to know who you with. You don't know if you tell this to somebody and they go crazy. So you got to test. If it's a woman and she hasn't disclosed, you have to test the waters to see if this
Well, what
motherfucker.
the hell if you haven't disclosed? You got to do the same thing.
Right, right, right. I
So
don't know. I'm different. I tell
yeah,
everything.
well,
I
you
don't know.
don't know. You don't know. You only know what you know, right? From a male perspective. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you had to tell your community, and when I say community, I mean outside of the HIV world, right? Because we know we have our own little community, HIV advocates, people living with HIV. We kind of have our own little world, right? But if you had to tell the people that are on this live something, what would be the most important thing that you would want them to take from this live about being a heterosexual man living with HIV/AIDS? What is the most important thing you would want them to take from this?
Stop assuming that I got a disease by laying with other men.
Okay.
I lived life and I had to survive, and I made a choice to survive, and that's why I'm here.
So your message is
Period.
don't assume that every man who has HIV or AIDS contracted that because they were in a relationship with a man. And then
And and one of the reason why that myth is because to get HIV from a woman, that's probably the hardest way you can contract HIV. That's the lowest risk possible. So people assume, oh, so you didn't get it from a woman. It's possible. It just doesn't happen often.
And it will happen if you have a woman who is HIV positive or who is living with AIDS and they're not taking their medication, right? So
Absolutely.
if we're taking our medication, that means we are undetectable, untransmittable, meaning that sexually we cannot transmit this virus. But if we are not taking our medication, or hell, don't even know that we're HIV positive and we're having unprotected sex, yes, you can possibly catch it from a woman, right? And so I think for me, I tell people all the time, listen, first of all, you can't look at somebody and tell that they're HIV positive, right? That myth is still
Nah.
floating in the air, which amazes me, right? But you cannot look at someone and tell that they're HIV positive. So I tell people all the time, listen, you have to make sure that you are the most important person to you. And that means protect yourself. Learn how to have condom negotiation. Listen, if you're not with this person 24/7, then there's a chance that you can contract HIV, right? And so I have people that are married, like, oh, I'm married, I don't have to worry about that. Listen, if you have a little inkling of a thought in your mind that either party has stepped out, you need to be, first of all, I think this should be a part of everyone's annual visit. You should be getting tested for HIV. Whether you feel you're at risk or not, you need to be getting tested for HIV. It should be part of your annual. Just like your blood pressure and they check for your cholesterol and all that, you should also be getting tested for HIV and other STDs.
We need to start.
You know.
No, as a sex educator, let me ask a question. Let me tell you something that people don't ask. The one question that people should ask, people don't ask. What's your sexual history? When's the last time you got a text?
Now
If
answer
it's
me
if it's anything over,
you said that. Now tell me how that conversation has been with you once you disclose to a woman that you have an AIDS diagnosis and they're accepting of it. I know that you still have to have that conversation with them about their sexual history, right? Because we know that we got HIV or AIDS and we take our medication, right? So we know we can't give you HIV and AIDS, but you can give us something else. So how has that conversation been for you with
no.
the woman?
Listen, they can't give us something else. They can give us everything else.
Yeah, well. But how is that how do you navigate that conversation?
Well, for me, that's I've never really had to have that conversation, but I've had peers that I had to coach through a conversation like that.
Wait, stop. You've had relationships outside of when you were married. Why? What do you mean you've never had to have that conversation?
I did.
And so, how did you navigate that?
They were advocates.
So, when I say navigate it, how did you have that conversation with the woman? Like, okay, I've disclosed to you, but still, this is what I
That
need
was
you to do.
that was an open, honest back and forth because
Okay.
they were in this field.
So they wanted to
They
let
were
you know
literate. They were literate already.
they were educated.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've never had to really had that conversation.
Okay.
But the last time a friend came to me and I said, as an outreach worker, I could walk down the street and determine things about people because I was trained that way. But when you're not trained to ask different questions, sometimes it's uneasy. And I always say, if y'all about to have sex, why y'all scared about asking questions? I don't understand.
And a lot of people are. That's the crazy
I
thing.
don't
People
understand.
love to have sex, but people are scared to ask the sexual questions they need to ask to protect themselves. And to me, it's mind boggling. I don't understand. I don't understand. After I sit in a room, women and tell them, listen, I'm living with HIV and I contracted it from a heterosexual man, I assume, who I was in a relationship with, and I assume I trusted him, and I
Hmm.
contracted HIV by somebody I trusted, right? I wasn't out here doing whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so it can happen to you, right? And so you need to ask these questions. And I mean, I ain't gonna lie, before I contracted HIV, that wasn't a conversation I had before I had sex, right? You trust people. You trust that this person is not going to turn your life upside down, right? Because when you get that diagnosis, or I know for me, when I got my HIV diagnosis, it turned my life upside down. Now, I also say that HIV saved my life because it made me stop in my tracks and take a look at the things that I was doing and the things that I
Hmm.
was not doing, right? And it made me focus in and zero in on me and my health. So for
Hmm.
me, it woke me up to a bunch of things. But a lot of people don't think like that, right? We just live in life, like everything is okay and nothing can happen to us. And oh, that would not happen to me because I could tell and I'm safe. I'm safe, but I'm not using condoms.
Somebody once said, "Oh, I know what I know what somebody with HIV looks like," and I'm standing in front of them. They don't know my status. I'm like, "What do they look like? Do I look like one?" And I said, "Do I look like one of the motherfuckers?" Just like that. Do I look like one of the motherfuckers? Nah, nah, nah. You good? You good? Nigga, you don't know what the fuck you talking about. I got AIDS. I've been having HIV for 20 years. It was like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's 2022, and that's why I do these lives and these educationals because I want people to know, listen, at the end of the day, get tested, right? Trust yourself enough to know that you trust you. And I'm not saying that you need to be paranoid and not trust your partner and all that, but trust yourself more, right? Get tested. Know your diagnosis and tell the person that you're with, listen, we need to go get tested together and let's see each other's results on paper, not, oh, I'm good. The doctor told me I'm good. No. And in most places, they'll let you go in the room together and get tested together if that's something that works better for you, right? So there's a lot of people and agencies, I'm sure, in each state that you can get educated, you can get questions answered. If you're on my Facebook, you can always inbox me for questions. Pedro, if you can, put your either email or contact information in the chat if anybody wants to contact you, because maybe there's a heterosexual man that has popped into the live who is HIV positive and they are struggling with this diagnosis. They are struggling with disclosing to someone. And so
I don't
maybe
even know how to do that. Let me
um,
go back to where the hell I was at.
just write in the comment box, or I'll
Okay.
I'll I'll post it in there later if you can't do it.
Yeah, now I
Um,
know.
so
I don't even know how to get back.
he clicked yourself out, Jesus. So guys, hopefully he'll come back. We got 7 minutes left, but again, like I said, up there he is. There you
Oh, what the
are.
heck is that?
I'll post your information once we get off. So we got 6 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, please, please, please post them
No,
in
let
the
me say. Let me say one thing. Um. Damn, I forgot what the hell. Let somebody ask some questions. It'll hit me back in a minute.
If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. As I said before, you guys are more than welcome to jump in on the live. All you had to do was click on the link. Please share this live because this is information that you never know. Someone that you don't know is living with HIV and they may be struggling and they need to link with somebody to get some supportive services. Know that more than likely you have a family member, a friend, a church member, someone you work with who's living with HIV and they may possibly be suffering alone. I tell people all the time, please, please, please get educated on what HIV is and what HIV isn't. As you can see, my friend Pedro is a very handsome man, and when you look at him, most people don't think that he is living with HIV and AIDS, but he is, and it still doesn't deter or it doesn't. make him the person that he is. This is something that is living with him. But again, this is just to educate you guys and let you know that HIV and AIDS is out here, right? The virus, uh, people are being diagnosed, more and more. We would love to see the end to HIV and AIDS, but unfortunately, because people are still continuing to have unprotected sex, people are not asking the questions that they need to ask. People are still being diagnosed with HIV. And yes, we can live with HIV. We take medication that makes us, again, as I said before, undetectable, meaning that I cannot transmit. Pedro could not transmit, even with the AIDS diagnosis. Pedro is undetectable, and he sexually cannot transmit HIV to anyone that he is having sexual relations with. So if he and the person that he's having sex with decide that they don't want to use a condom, he will not transmit the HIV virus. But in that, also know that there is a medication called PrEP that you can take that can be another layer of protection for you if you are HIV negative, to stop you from contracting HIV. Meaning that if you come in contact with someone who is HIV positive and say either they don't know that they're positive, or B, they're not taking their medication for whatever the reason is, you would not contract the virus. So reach out to your local health departments, your primary care physician, ask to be tested. I'm sure in any area that you go to, there are HIV/AIDS clinics that you can go and get tested. Most places it's for free. So please, 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 guys, protect yourself, because if you don't have to live with HIV, why should you?
And
Um,
ask the real questions. Ask the real questions because everybody doesn't want to ask the real questions. Like when people let's I have a friend that got into a relationship, and she found out later in the relationship that he was an abuser. I said, yeah. I said the problem is that we out here believing other sinners.
yeah, there you go. So ask the questions. Guys, please, please, please share the live so that the information can get out there. If you have any questions, please feel free to inbox me. I am open for any type of questions. I will post Pedro's information in the chat area once we get off. Pedro, thank you so much for taking the time out your day to come and chat with me. I really, really, really appreciate it. So I'm going to give you the last minute. What's one thing you want to say that you want everybody to take home with them?
Just because I have HIV or AIDS don't mean I can't live. I live every day.
Come on now. You better say that. We out here thriving, baby. Living.
I'm
Fantastic.
like I'm I'm like a nice old fashioned Cadillac with nice new rims, but got a dent I can't get rid of. That's all
Come
that
on
is.
now.
That's all that is.
Come on now. All right, people. We thank y'all so very much for tuning in. Please stay tuned and look for the next episode of Chatting with Granny Dawn. Again, Pedro, thank you so much. And we will talk to you people soon. Bye.